I trusted you both. You betrayed me. Now I decide what it costs.
I'm 26, living in Ohio, and I work full-time as a heavy equipment technician at Morrison Construction. Not bad at all for someone who skipped the college route. I've always been the type to keep to myself, avoid unnecessary drama, work hard, and build a stable life. I never expected to be the center of something so insane, but here we are. At 23, I became a homeowner. I didn't inherit anything. I didn't have help. I bought that house outright with money I scraped together from years of grinding construction jobs during high school and community college. For 5 straight years, I lived cheap. Roommates, cheap food, and a rust bucket Honda. 60-hour weeks were my norm. Eventually, that effort paid off. It wasn't some luxury property, just a modest 3-bedroom place in a quiet area with a double garage perfect for working on engines. The real win? No debt, no mortgage. I was incredibly proud of that. While most of my peers were swimming in student loans or living with their parents, I had something solid to show for my discipline. The house was rough when I got it. The previous owner was an older guy who hadn't done any upkeep in years. So every weekend I fixed it up myself. I laid new floors, redid the wiring, painted the walls, and even cleaned up the landscaping. By the time I was done, I'd probably added $40,000 in value. I've always taken pride in doing things right with my own 2 hands. As for my family, it's a small story, but not without pain. My dad, Robert, is 54. He started his own plumbing business from nothing 2 decades ago. Back then, he was just a guy with a beat-up van and some tools. Now, he runs a crew of a dozen guys, owns a full shop, and has a fleet of service trucks. He's done well for himself, easily worth a couple million. He cruises around in a decked-out F-150 King Ranch and lives in a house on Lake Erie with all the bells and whistles, including a private dock. He's basically the blueprint of the American dream. When I was 16, my mom, Sarah, passed away after battling cancer for 8 grueling months. Watching her fade away while the medical bills piled up, even with insurance, was one of the hardest experiences of my life. To afford her treatment, my dad had to sell our house, and we downsized to a much smaller place. She fought with everything she had, but cancer doesn't care how strong or good a person is. Losing her during my junior year of high school broke me in ways I never fully admitted. For a long time afterward, it was just me and my dad. We got really close because we didn't have much choice. He showed me how to handle tools, how to stay disciplined, how to treat people with respect, and always keep my word. We'd work on cars in the garage, spend weekends fishing, eat pizza while watching football. He never tried to pretend Mom's death didn't matter, never tried to fill the void with someone else. But he did make sure I knew he'd always be there for me, no matter what. He never remarried, but after a few years, he started dating casually. Always younger women, never anything that lasted long. I used to tease him about it. "Dad, she's literally younger than I am," I'd laugh. But honestly, I figured he'd earned the right to have some fun. He'd worked like a dog to build his company from the ground up, and it was his money. He could spend it how he wanted. And let's be real. For his age, he looked good. He stayed in shape, dressed well, and had plenty of confidence. Women noticed. What really defined my dad, though, was how seriously he took loyalty. Family meant everything to him. He always used to say, "Blood's thicker than water. Family's all you've got in the end." That's how he lived. And I believed every word. When I was 23 and didn't have much credit built up yet, he helped me buy my house by co-signing the loan. He was always ready with advice, whether it was about work, dating, or just life in general. I had a ton of respect for him and genuinely believed he felt the same way about me. Turns out you can be completely wrong about the people closest to you. This is where the whole story really begins. Around 3.5 years ago, I met this woman named Jessica. It was at Murphy's Sports Bar, a low-key spot I'd go to after work now and then. Nothing fancy, good burgers, cold beers, not too loud, not too crowded. Just a solid hangout for working-class guys like me. Jessica was waitressing there, and I won't lie, she was stunning. Blonde, tall, curvy, in all the right places. Super cute face. Honestly, way out of my league. But she seemed to notice me. Every time I came in, she'd make sure I got her section. She'd remember my order, smile when she talked to me. I'm not super smooth with women, but she made it easy. She was 24, had gone to college for a bit but didn't finish, majored in communications or something like that. She'd always be venting about how broke she was, crushing student debt, tiny apartment with 3 roommates, unreliable car, barely making it paycheck to paycheck. She had that struggling pretty girl energy that makes guys want to fix everything. I felt bad for her. Here she was, beautiful and kind, busting her A for tips while I had a steady income and a comfortable life. I started tipping her extra, like $20 on a $15 bill, and would offer help when she mentioned car trouble or rent issues. "You don't have to do that," she'd tell me, but she never actually said no. We got to talking more each visit. She'd sit with me during her breaks, open up about her life, ask about my job. I'd tell her about the equipment I worked on, dozers, excavators, dump trucks, and she seemed genuinely fascinated. "That's seriously impressive," she said once. "I couldn't fix anything if my life depended on it." After a couple months of casual conversation, I finally worked up the nerve to ask her out. She said yes without hesitation, even seemed excited. We went to a nice Italian restaurant, then caught a movie. She was great, funny, easy to be around, laughed at my dumb jokes. The chemistry was undeniable. She'd brush my arm when she laughed, leaned in close during the film, and at the end of the night, kissed me like we were in some teenage rom-com. Things got serious fast. Within 6 weeks, she was practically living at my place. Her lease was about to end, and she wasn't sure what to do. She complained that the apartment and roommates were too much, too expensive, too chaotic, not ideal for someone trying to get her life in order. Trying to be helpful, I told her she could crash with me for a bit until she figured things out. Just a temporary arrangement. Give her time to save up, find a new place, get back on her feet. I had space, and to be honest, I liked having her there. It made the place feel less like a crash pad and more like a home. That short-term plan turned into a miserable 3 years. And this is where I realized just how clueless I was. Looking back, I want to smack myself for not seeing it. Roughly 2 weeks after she moved in, she quit her job at Murphy's. Said the place was toxic, the customers were jerks, and the stress was ruining her mental health. There was this one group of businessmen, she told me. Total creeps. No tip, made disgusting comments. My manager didn't even back me up. She followed it up with, "I just need some space to figure out what I want to do with my life. I can't even think straight when I'm this overwhelmed." At the time, I was pulling in about $78K a year with plenty of overtime. I figured no big deal. I could cover things for a little while. She'd land something better eventually, maybe something that actually fit her skills. But she never did. Jessica didn't pitch in a dime for 3 straight years. I covered absolutely everything. Housing costs, electric bills, food, gas, her car payments, cell phone, clothing, entertainment, you name it. I paid for it. She never contributed anything financially, not even once. Her lifestyle was laughable. Most mornings, she wouldn't crawl out of bed until close to noon, while I was up before sunrise, heading out to a grueling job. I'd spend my day elbows deep in busted diesel engines and hydraulic fluid, coming home sore, filthy, and wiped out around 6 in the evening. Meanwhile, she'd still be in pajamas, lounging on the couch binge-watching Netflix. "How was your day, baby?" she'd say, eyes glued to the screen, not even bothering to press pause. "Busy? How about yours?" "Oh, just chilled." She always claimed she was applying for jobs, but I never saw interviews lined up, no callbacks, and definitely no real effort to change her situation. At the same time, she was blowing through my paycheck like it was Monopoly money. Packages from Amazon landed on our porch constantly. Makeup, clothes, random junk she didn't need. She was ordering designer handbags that cost more than what I earned in a week. Pricey skincare, gym outfits she never wore, decorative crap that cluttered the house. I'd ask what was for dinner, and she'd act like I was speaking another language. "I don't know. What do you feel like making?" she'd reply. "There's stuff in the fridge." So after putting in a 10-hour shift, I'd come home and cook, too, while she flipped through shows on the remote. She never offered to cook. Never even suggested ordering takeout. And certainly never with her own money, since she didn't have any. Whenever I brought up the idea of her getting a job, she always had a reason she couldn't. The economy was supposedly trash. No one was hiring. She said she was too qualified for service jobs, but not qualified enough for anything else. She talked about maybe going back to school, but said she needed time to look into options. She blamed anxiety, burnout, and every excuse under the sun to avoid employment. But she had no issue telling me how to spend my money. She constantly nagged me about trading in my 2018 truck for something newer. Said we needed to upgrade all the furniture because mine looked too single guy. Kept talking about exotic vacations, Cancun, Hawaii, Paris, like we were rolling in cash. When I explained that it wasn't doable with only one income, she'd throw a fit and start sulking. All my friends' boyfriends treat them better, she'd say. Sarah's guy just surprised her with a $500 purse. Ashley's fiance flew her to Europe last summer. Maybe their boyfriends weren't covering every single expense while their girlfriends sat at home doing nothing. I should have told her that. But I didn't, because I thought I was in love. I wanted her to feel happy, so I picked up every extra shift I could. Saturdays, Sundays, weeknights, whatever was available. I was running myself into the ground just to keep up with the lifestyle she wanted. Meanwhile, she kept sleeping in, shopping nonstop, and treating the place like a spa retreat. And the worst part? She acted like she was owed all of it. She'd host friends at our house without even mentioning it to me. They'd drink my beer, eat my snacks, and stream shows on my accounts. When I finally told her I didn't like being blindsided by guests after a 12-hour workday, she made me feel like I was being antisocial. "It's not like you had any plans," she said. "My friends think you don't even like them." All I wanted was to come home and enjoy some peace and quiet in the home I paid for. She also made plans without ever checking with me. "We're having dinner with my sister tomorrow," she'd say. Or, "I told Ashley we'd go to her party this weekend." No asking if I was free, just assuming I'd tag along. And when I pushed back, she'd flip it on me. "I'm trying to have a social life," she'd argue. "You work constantly and never want to do anything fun. I thought you'd appreciate me including you." I was working nonstop because I was the only one paying for our life, and fun, in her mind, meant spending even more of my paycheck. The truth is, the physical side of our relationship was the only thing keeping me from waking up. Love with Jessica was good. She was adventurous, enthusiastic, made me feel like a king. But looking back, I think it was all strategic. As long as I was happy in bed, I wouldn't ask questions about everything else being so one-sided. I should have thrown her freeloading, self-absorbed self out within the first few months. But I was blind. I thought she'd eventually get serious, pull her weight, grow into a real partner. I assumed this was just part of being in a relationship, that men provided and women appreciated it. Wrong. Healthy relationships aren't built like that. I was being taken advantage of by someone who knew exactly how to play me. And I was too kind and too green to catch on. About a year into living together, I figured it was time for Jessica to meet my dad. She'd been asking to meet him, saying it mattered to her that my family accepted her. Dad had also been asking when he'd get to meet the woman I kept talking about. The red flags were there, but I missed them. Jessica, who never bothered dressing up for anything, not even for dinner with me, spent 3 full hours getting ready to meet my father. Hair curled, full face of makeup, tight jeans that left nothing to the imagination, and a top cut low enough to draw attention. She looked like she was headed to a nightclub, not a family dinner. When I asked her why she went all out, she said, "I want to leave a great first impression. I really care about what your family thinks of me." "You look amazing," I replied. "But maybe something a bit more toned down? It's just a casual meal with my father." She instantly got defensive. "So now you're ashamed of how I dress? I thought you'd be proud to show me off. I just want your dad to like me." I didn't want to argue, so I let it go. But something about her reaction felt off. That night, my dad came over for dinner. I made steaks, baked potatoes, the whole deal. The second he walked in, Jessica changed completely. Normally, she was pretty shy around new people, especially older guys. She'd told me once she had a rough relationship with her own father and didn't do well with authority figures. But around my dad, she was the opposite. Bubbly, animated, practically glued to every word he said. She hung on his stories, laughed at every joke, and peppered him with questions about his business. I couldn't believe it. She never cared about my work. If I tried telling her about my job, she'd tune out within minutes. Now she was suddenly fascinated by plumbing contracts and small business strategy? "That's so impressive, Robert," she kept saying. "You must be really brilliant to build a whole company from the ground up." She was laying it on thick, way too thick. And my dad? He was loving it. He always liked being the center of attention, especially when a pretty girl was involved. He started telling longer stories, cracking more jokes, obviously showing off. He was practically glowing under her attention. At one point he said, "So this is the woman who's turned my son into a homebody," giving her a wink. "You must be quite the catch." Jessica blushed and did this weird giggle I'd never heard from her before. "Mike's incredible," she replied. "I'm lucky to have someone so dependable and grounded." She put extra emphasis on grounded, like it was the most attractive quality a man could have. That alone should have been a major red flag. All through dinner, she gushed over everything. His watch, his truck, his lake house, even his business advice. She asked him questions about entrepreneurship like she was meeting Elon Musk. It felt less like she was talking to her boyfriend's dad and more like she was interviewing someone she was crushing on. And the way she behaved was strange, too. Twisting her hair, adjusting her shirt every few minutes, leaning toward him when he spoke. I'd never seen her act like that with me, or anyone else. Later, after Dad left, I brought it up. "You were kind of different tonight," I said. "What do you mean?" she asked, acting like she had no idea what I was talking about. "I don't know. More flirty than usual. It felt like you were really laying it on thick." She instantly got defensive. "I was just being friendly. Isn't that what you wanted? For me to get along with your family? I thought things went well." "They did. I just noticed how hard you were trying to impress him." "Of course I was trying," she snapped. "He's your dad. His opinion matters if this relationship is going anywhere." It sounded reasonable, I guess, but my gut said otherwise. Then came the weird part. My dad started stopping by way more than usual. He'd never been one to randomly show up, but now he was at my house almost weekly, always with some random excuse. He'd say he needed to borrow a wrench, or wanted help moving something, or just felt like checking in to see how things were holding up. Funny thing, he only ever came by when Jessica was home, never when she was out or busy. I started to notice the pattern. He also suddenly took an interest in house projects, wanted to help replace light fixtures, offered to check out the plumbing, suggested we do some yard work together. "Good bonding time," he said. "Besides, Jessica mentioned she'd love to see the backyard fixed up." That was news to me. Jessica had never said a word to me about landscaping, but I didn't question it. I figured, hey, time with my dad, house improvements, what's the harm? So we spent weekends working on the place, putting in a deck, updating the bathroom, planting shrubs. Jessica was always nearby, helping by bringing us drinks, complimenting our work, asking questions. She always wore little tank tops and short shorts that showed a lot of skin. She said it was just because of the heat, but I noticed the way my dad looked at her. Not casual glances, lingering stares, the kind that made me uncomfortable, especially when she bent over or reached for something. I mentioned it to Jessica later. "Older guys just notice beauty more," she shrugged. "It's no big deal. He's probably just remembering what it felt like to be young." Should have been my 50th warning sign, but I ignored it. After 2 years of living together and covering all her expenses, I finally decided it was time to propose. Jessica had been dropping hints like crazy, sharing engagement ring posts on social media, talking about weddings she saw on TV, leaving bridal magazines open on the kitchen table. "Ashley's ring is stunning," she'd say, waving her phone at me. "She's so lucky. I want something just like that." She wasn't exactly subtle. I started saving and doing my research. Jessica had expensive taste, so I knew I'd have to shell out big if I wanted to impress her. I spent a ridiculous $7,500 on a 1.5 carat diamond solitaire from a reputable jeweler in town. It was far more than I should have spent, but Jessica had dropped plenty of not-so-subtle hints before, talking about how small rings looked cheap and how she'd be humiliated to wear something basic. One look at a woman's engagement ring should tell you how much her man values her, she once said. If a guy is serious about you, he'll want the ring to reflect that. A cheap ring screams you're not worth it. I decided to propose on our 2-year anniversary. I planned a romantic dinner at a quiet lakeside restaurant about an hour from home. We got a table with a perfect sunset view, and I kept the ring tucked in my pocket the entire time, nervously waiting for the right moment. Once dessert came, I got down on one knee right there at the table. Jessica started crying happy tears and said yes, without hesitation, kissing me in front of the entire dining room. The other guests clapped, and for a moment it felt like something out of a movie. She wasted no time showing off the ring. Within an hour, she had posted photos online, called all her friends, and texted half her phone contacts. Everyone she knew was talking about our engagement by that evening. That's when things began to shift. Jessica threw herself into wedding planning like it was her new job, and everything on her wish list was top dollar. She wanted an extravagant venue that charged $40K, designer bouquets, a tailored gown, a luxury photographer, fancy food, the whole 9 yards. When I tried to be realistic about our finances, especially since we were still running on my single income, she exploded. "This is the biggest day of my life!" she'd scream. "Don't you love me enough to give me the wedding I've dreamed of?" She constantly showed me photos of influencer weddings and expensive ceremonies her friends had. "I don't want people whispering that our wedding looked cheap," she'd say. Everyone I know is doing gorgeous weddings. I deserve the same. So I worked like a madman. Every extra shift, every Saturday, every holiday. Some weeks I was putting in 70 hours, getting home beyond exhausted just to make the kind of money this wedding would take. Jessica, still not working, still blowing cash like we had an endless supply, still waking up at noon and lounging around while I busted my A. Then things started to get strange between her and my dad. Jessica had always been polite to him, but nothing more than surface-level friendliness. After the engagement, though, she suddenly acted like he was her wedding guru. She'd ask him what he thought of flower arrangements, reception halls, even cake options. "Your dad has amazing taste," she'd say. "He really knows how to make things elegant." It didn't even make sense. My dad got married once 25 years ago, at a courthouse with no frills. What did he know about floral design? But Jessica acted like he was a top-tier consultant. She'd call him, email him, even set up video chats, asking about menu choices and reception layouts. Next thing I knew, my dad was coming over even more frequently. He always had an excuse, dropping off brochures, wanting to look at Pinterest boards, going over budgets. He always showed up during the day when I was at work and spent hours with Jessica. When I'd ask what they'd discussed, Jessica would shrug. "Just boring wedding stuff," she'd say. "You don't care about seating charts and centerpieces, do you?" Actually, I did care. It was supposed to be our wedding. Why was my own father more involved than me? Then Jessica started acting strange in other ways. She'd suddenly hop in the shower just before I got home each evening. She began doing her own laundry, which was new. She used to dump it on me, and she never left her phone unattended anymore. That thing was glued to her like it contained national secrets. Around the same time, she got super into fitness. Jessica, who previously thought walking to the fridge was exercise, now had a gym membership at one of the pricier places in town. And she even hired a personal trainer. "I want to look amazing in my dress," she'd say. "Wouldn't you love to marry a fit, confident bride?" She started going daily, sometimes for 3 hours. She came home dripping in sweat, glowing, talking nonstop about her workouts and her trainer. She started posting gym selfies constantly. It didn't add up. This was the same woman who couldn't be bothered to sweep the kitchen, now suddenly obsessed with lunges and protein shakes. The final 6 months were a blur of red flags. I chalk most of it up to pre-wedding pressure, but looking back, I don't know how I missed the signs. Her schedule became impossible to follow. She'd say she was shopping for dresses, but never brought anything home. She'd claim she met with caterers, but had no clue what dishes were being offered. If I asked too many questions, she got defensive fast. "Why don't you trust me?" she'd snap. "You think I'm lying about trying to plan our wedding?" My dad's behavior was off, too. He started calling the landline during the day, knowing I'd be at work, and always asked to speak to Jessica. She told me they just went over logistical stuff, like the guest list or the timeline. "Nothing important," she'd say, "just reception details you don't need to worry about." But why couldn't any of it wait until I was home? Why were they planning my wedding without me? Why were there calls happening behind my back? Every instinct I had was flashing red, but I didn't want to believe what my gut already knew. I started noticing things that didn't sit right. Jessica would get texts at weird hours, sometimes close to midnight or just after dawn, and she'd immediately tilt her screen away from me when I glanced over. "Oh, it's just my sister," she'd say casually, or Ashley asking about wedding plans. But then she'd erase the messages right away, which wasn't like her. Before, she let texts pile up in her phone. It didn't help that her car would often feel warm when she claimed to have been home the entire day. I'd also find receipts from stores and restaurants she never mentioned visiting. Her gas tank seemed emptier than it should have been for someone who only claimed to go to the gym and pick up groceries. The real wake-up call came the day I came home early from work and ran into something completely out of the ordinary. I had finished my assignment early and thought I'd surprise Jessica, maybe take her out for lunch. Her car was parked in the driveway, which wasn't strange, but I could hear the shower running upstairs when I walked in. It was around 2:30 in the afternoon, not her usual shower time. She usually washed up in the morning. I called her name but got no response. Figuring she couldn't hear me over the water, I went upstairs. The bathroom door was shut tight, and the water was still running. When I turned the doorknob, it was locked. Jessica never locked the bathroom door when she showered. In more than 2 years of living together, not once had she done that. So why now? I knocked again and said her name. No answer for half a minute. Then finally she replied, "Just a sec." Her voice sounded startled, almost nervous. Another 30 seconds passed before she opened the door, wrapped in a towel. Her hair barely looked damp. "You startled me," she said, clutching the towel. "Didn't hear you come in." "Why'd you lock the door?" I asked. "Was it locked?" "I probably hit the lock by accident," she replied, clearly flustered. But the facts didn't line up. The amount of water running didn't match how wet her hair was, and she seemed tense, like she'd just been interrupted doing something she didn't want me to know about. When I asked where she'd been that day, she said she'd just been home relaxing and decided to take a midday shower. But her car's hood was still hot when I touched it. If she'd really been home all day, that engine wouldn't have been warm. Another odd moment came when I was searching for a pen in her purse and found a receipt from Romano's Steakhouse. We'd never eaten there together. When I asked about it, she told me it was from a while ago and she forgot to toss it. But the date stamped on it was only 2 days earlier, and Romano's isn't cheap. It's a place where meals run $50 or more per person. How was she affording a meal like that without any income? That's when my gut started twisting every time I thought about Jessica and my dad. The way she smiled at him, the way he looked at her, their overly frequent planning sessions, her secrecy, her inconsistencies. I started connecting dots, but I didn't want to believe what they spelled out. Jessica said she loved me. She accepted my proposal. We were planning our future. And my father? The man who raised me taught me everything about integrity and hard work. He'd never crossed that line. He always told me family came first. The idea that anything could be happening between them was so vile, so insane, I refused to even entertain it. I should have followed my instincts. I should have confronted them, demanded explanations, dug deeper. But fear got the better of me. I was afraid of what I might uncover, so I chalked it up to insecurity or paranoia. I was an idiot. The day everything blew apart is seared into my memory. Early March, a Saturday I'll never forget. That's the day my world shattered, the moment I saw both Jessica and my dad for who they really were. I was working overtime for Morrison Construction. We had a major deadline on a highway contract, and the state was putting pressure on us to get it done. We were all hands on deck that weekend, with double pay on the table. That morning, I was on site by 6 a.m., working on a huge excavator that had suffered a hydraulic failure. Jessica knew I'd be gone all day. I told her Friday night I wouldn't be home until around 9 p.m., maybe later. She mentioned she'd be hanging out with her sister Amy, shopping, lunch, maybe some salon time. Just a laid-back Saturday with the girls. By 1 p.m., our work was ahead of schedule. The replacement parts had arrived early and the repair process had gone smoothly. Our foreman, Dave, looked around and said, "Let's call it early, guys. We're ahead of the curve. Go enjoy the rest of your Saturday." I was tired, but happy. I'd still get full pay, and I suddenly had some free time. I figured I'd surprise Jessica, maybe catch her before she got too far into her afternoon plans, and treat her to lunch. I headed home with country music playing and barbecue on my mind. But as I turned onto my street around 1:45 p.m., everything felt wrong. Jessica's white Honda was parked out front. That was strange. She was supposed to be out with Amy, but right behind it, blocking her in, was a very familiar black F-150 King Ranch, my dad's truck. I knew it anywhere, those custom rims, the window tint, and the Big Chen's plumbing decal on the side. What on earth was my father doing at my house in the middle of a Saturday afternoon? I sat in my car, heart racing, trying to come up with any explanation that made sense. Maybe Jessica wasn't feeling well and called him for help. Maybe something at the house needed fixing and she asked him to stop by. Maybe Amy had canceled and Dad just happened to visit. But no matter how hard I tried, none of the scenarios I imagined felt right. Deep down, I knew something was seriously wrong. I stepped out of my truck and walked up to the house, unlocking the front door quietly. The place was silent, except for some unmistakable noises coming from upstairs, from the direction of my bedroom. Sounds I knew all too well. My stomach flipped and my hands started trembling. I wanted to storm up the stairs and start yelling at the top of my lungs. But something made me freeze, maybe instinct, maybe disbelief. Instead, I took out my phone and opened the camera app. If this was what I suspected, I'd need proof. Real, irrefutable evidence. Something they couldn't lie their way out of. I slipped off my work boots to avoid making a sound on the hardwood stairs. As I crept upward, the noises got louder, clearer, and undeniably what I feared. The bedroom door was wide open. They weren't even pretending to be discreet. And there it was. The man who raised me after my mom passed, the same man who taught me how to fix a carburetor and throw a football, was in my bed with my fiancée. The woman I was set to marry in just over 2 months. The one I'd supported financially for 3 years. The same woman wearing the engagement ring I dropped $7,500 on was riding my father. And it wasn't just some detached hookup. She was into it, way more than I'd ever seen her with me. She was moaning things that made my stomach churn. "Oh God, you feel so much better than him," she moaned. "I wasted 3 years faking it with that boy when I could have had a real man. And my dad?" He was grabbing her like some desperate teenager, telling her how she was hotter and tighter than women half her age. They were mocking me, talking trash about me, while screwing in the bed I bought, in the home I worked my tail off to own. He's clueless," my dad chuckled. "The poor kid thinks he's marrying someone loyal. What an idiot," Jessica laughed. "He actually believes I've been hitting the gym for 3 hours a day, please. Like I'd sweat when I could be here with you." They laughed together, like it was some inside joke, like I was some joke, while I stood there recording every second. I made sure I got their faces, their voices, their filthy betrayal in HD. My hands were shaking, but my mind was steady. I wasn't heartbroken. I was furious, pure rage. After a few minutes, I had enough. I cleared my throat, loud and sharp. Their reaction? Absolute chaos. Jessica shrieked and dove under the sheets. My dad jumped up and fumbled for his clothes. I didn't stop recording. "Turn that off," Jessica cried. "This isn't what it looks like." "Oh, really?" I said, voice calm as ice. "Because it looks like you're screwing my dad in my bed while I'm out working to fund your wedding." My dad tried to take control. "Son, let's be reasonable. Let's talk this through like grown men. Grown men don't sleep with their son's fiancé," I snapped. "Both of you, get out." Jessica started crying. "Please, baby, it was a mistake. It just happened." "How long?" I asked. She hesitated. "Since the engagement, months." She broke down. I looked at my dad, now half-dressed, avoiding my eyes. "Leave, you're nothing to me now." It took them 10 minutes to get dressed and go. I sat on the couch, fury burning behind my eyes, already planning what I was going to do next. See? I knew things. Things about my dad's business that could blow it all up. His plumbing company held multiple city contracts, over $800,000 a year. And those contracts came with ethics clauses. I also knew about shady tax practices, safety violations I had once helped cover up. I made a few phone calls. One friend worked in the city inspection office. Another wrote for the local paper. And someone else I knew had ties to the state revenue department. But I didn't strike right away. I let them stew, made them think I was staying quiet, that they dodged the bullet. A week later, they were desperate. Jessica's parents had thrown her out. My dad was clearly starting to panic. They came to my job together. "Mike," my dad called. "Can we talk?" Jessica chimed in. "We all made mistakes, but Robert wants to make it right. He's willing to give you 40 grand to help you start fresh. And we're in love," Dad added. "We want to be together. We'd appreciate your blessing." Unbelievable. After destroying my life, they wanted my blessing? Jessica kept talking. "Robert's going to take care of me. We're house hunting, thinking about having a baby. I'll finally have the secure life I deserve." I acted like I was considering it. "Let me sleep on it. Meet me tomorrow at Romano's Steakhouse, and we'll talk through the details." They seemed relieved, like I was about to forgive them. The next evening, they arrived dressed up, like they were celebrating. I was already there, sitting at the table with a manila envelope in front of me. "Before we talk," I said, pushing the envelope toward Jessica, "I have something for you." She opened it slowly. Inside were full-color stills from the footage. Faces clear, the betrayal plain as day. What is this?" she whispered. "Insurance," I said. "While you two were playing house behind my back, I've been making moves." Just then, my buddy Dave from the city inspector's office strolled over to our table. "Mr. Chen, I need a word about some serious discrepancies in your municipal contracts. Code violations, cheap material swaps, inflated invoices. We're launching a full review. Effective immediately, all active contracts are suspended." My dad's face drained of color. "Wait, what's going on?" "What's going on," I said calmly, "is that Robert's about to kiss goodbye to over half his company's revenue. You were pulling in, what, $800,000 a year from city work?" Jessica's eyes widened. "Oh my God. What else did you do?" "Oh, just a few things," I said. "I shared that lovely little video we made with everyone in your contact lists. Family, friends, coworkers, even your Bible study group. Figured they should know what kind of trash they've been associating with." She gasped. You didn't really... I also reached out to the state tax authorities, I added, looking directly at my father. Mentioned those piles of cash payments you never reported. Word is they're about to comb through every dollar of your finances. Something like $150,000 in undeclared income. He slumped into the booth, stunned. You're blowing up my entire life. You did that yourself the moment you slept with... I cut myself off and turned to Jessica. And you're going to find a real job. You owe me $23,000 for the years I supported your freeloading self. I don't have that kind of money. Then you'd better get used to working full-time like the rest of us. I stood up, grabbing my keys. Oh, and Robert, you're signing the deed to that lake cabin over to me. Think of it as payment for trauma. It's worth about $200,000, right? Actions have consequences. Maybe next time, don't betray your own blood. As I walked out the door, Jessica was freaking out, begging my dad to fix things. Meanwhile, he was starting to understand he'd just flushed his business, his name, and his only son down the drain for a manipulative gold digger who would bolt the second the cash dried up.